Welcome to the Self Love Model. On this podcast, we have open hearted and honest conversations about all things self love and the journey of self discovery. This podcast is for those on an everlasting journey of their own evolution, and most importantly, a safe space for us to heal together. I'm your host, Sid, and welcome to your self love session.
Hello, my angelic baddies. Welcome back to the Self Love Model. Guys, it feels good to be back. It's been 2 years since I've been podcasting, and this is entering in 2026. This is my third year going into podcasting. So, yeah, it's really crazy. I feel like I've grown so much since starting this podcast. And for those of you guys that have been with me since day one, I'm sure you've been able to witness the change in me and the growth. And I'm sure you guys have gone through lots of growth yourself as well because you're in this community. So, which means that you are probably really similar to me, and we're probably on pretty similar life paths for you to have been with me since day one. But in my very, very first episode, if you're here listening and you have listened to that first episode, you are a real one. Like, you are the OG, and I feel like you deserve something. And here is a virtual hug to you for listening to my very first episode and for tuning back in 2 years later. But in that very first episode, I really just spilled the tea, and I really laid it all out there. It was like me just like telling my entire upbringing into the very first episode, because starting the podcast, it was really important for me, for my listeners to know who I am. And I felt like in order to know who I am, in order to know who anyone is, it's really important to understand where they came from. Like, I feel like that's really important because it tells you so much about a person, why they react to things the way they do, why they handle certain things, and how they show up in the world. It all stems from our past and how we were raised. And a lot of times, if we don't do the work, our past dictates how we show up in the world now. But if we have done the work, we're able to learn from the past and what those lessons taught us. And, because I believe everything happens for a reason, and that I believe that we choose our life paths, and that, like, this is about to get a little spiritual and a little woo woo, but just stick with me here if you're not spiritual or woo woo. But I personally believe that we pick our parents before we even like enter the earth. Like, I believe that we have soul contracts with our parents, with the people in our lives. And sometimes when a person exits your life, it's because that soul contract is done and over with, and you both have learned whatever you needed to learn from each other. So that's what I believe in. And I feel like, God gives us what we can handle. And yeah, I feel like the more that you have to go through in life, it just means the tougher you are, and that you are a true warrior. I am a warrior princess. I feel like I was either a warrior or a princess or both in my past life. But I feel like I was definitely in my past life, like, in royalty or something. I just feel it because I was just born to be a princess or a queen, okay? So yeah, in the first episode, I like really shared everything, like how I was raised. And I feel like since this is the first episode of season 4, it's been 2 years. I feel like it's time. I feel like it's a good time for almost like a little refresher and re-intro. I'm not gonna like go into everything. And if you're really curious, you're more than welcome to go listen to my very first episode. Please just like remember that this is like a judgment-free zone, okay? I'm like, personally, I'm scared to listen to my old episodes because I'm like, dude, your girl was really vulnerable in those, like, my whole first season. I feel like my vulnerability and all the things I was able to share, I'm not sure that I can do it now. Actually, I probably could because when I'm podcasting, it really doesn't feel like I'm talking to a lot of people. It feels like it's just me talking to the void. So it feels a lot easier to be able to share things that I might not normally share in a room full of people, but then it's like I don't realize, but like people are listening, whether I realize it or not. But I feel like that's also another reason why the first couple seasons it felt a lot easier to like share all those things because I'm just getting started. I'm like, okay, there's maybe like a good 20 people that listen to me consistently. But then it's like, I've talked about this in my past episodes. It's like 20 people doesn't sound like a lot, but if you're in a room with 20 people, that's like a full classroom. So 20 people, I feel like it's just like a perspective shift. That's what life is all about. It's the perspective shifts. But yeah, so I recently had a coffee date with someone and we were sharing, I was getting to know her better and then she in turn like asked me about myself, like just a little bit more about me, who I am and what I do. So I kind of took her down memory lane and shared some more of myself. And it honestly had been a minute since I've shared that story from my past to someone else. So it was kind of nice to like do that again. And it just like really got me like reflecting on like how much I've grown. I feel like every time that I revisit the past and revisit those memories, it really does like take me back to that period of my life and really just helps me reflect on my journey so far. But for those of you that don't know and are new here, to give you a quick summary, my life growing up, my childhood was really far from your normal childhood. And I feel like a lot of people have experienced that as well, like where we just didn't have the normal childhood. I feel like it's really common, like people in my age. And to give you context, I'm 29, so I'm about to be 30. I'm a lot older than people think I am and I would take that all day. But yeah, so I am originally from Taiwan. Taiwan is a little island next to China. I always say that because I feel like I feel like Taiwan is just so underrated and people don't talk about it enough. And when I tell people I'm from Taiwan, they think I'm from Thailand, which they're two different places, but I understand the confusion, but they're two different places. So that's where I was born and raised. And my parents, like my mom and dad, growing up, they were deaf, so they can't speak or hear. So they both have disabilities. And no, they were not born with it because if they were, I probably would be deaf as well. And I'm very thankful that I am not because I am such a yapper. I actually cannot imagine not being able to talk. But yeah, so because of that, like my life has just never been normal. I was raised mostly by my grandparents growing up, and my dad actually passed when I was in kindergarten. So I really don't have a whole lot of memory of my dad. And right after my dad passed, like my mom, it was really, really hard for my mom. So I feel like since after my dad passed, that's like really when life changed for me. And she just was not the same. I feel like after that, she developed like mental health issues. And yeah, I just feel like as a kid, very early on, I knew that I really couldn't depend on my mom. And I felt like growing up, my household was chaotic. I never really felt like growing up, I've always had a feeling like I didn't belong in my family. Like I just felt like the odd one out. I was always very quiet and I just have like the feeling of being a black sheep. That is something that I've experienced my entire life. But it's definitely, like, really made me who I am today, and yeah, so I've never been one to, like, really feel like I fit in anywhere. Sometimes even with, like, groups of friends, I can still have that feeling of, like, feeling like I'm just like, there's just something a little bit, like, where I don't quite fully belong. It's weird, I don't know really how to describe it unless you also experience those feelings as well. But yeah, that is a feeling that I really experienced a lot growing up. And so I was raised by my grandparents. My dad passed away when I was young, early in life. And like I said, I've never really had a normal childhood. And I remember even being a kid thinking, like, oh my gosh, like, what is it gonna be like when I get married? Because in my head as a kid, you get married, you have the traditional wedding, your dad walks you down the aisle. And I remember thinking as a kid, like, I don't have a dad. Like, who's gonna walk me down the aisle? Oh my God, like, can I even get married? I just remember having thoughts like that as a kid. And obviously now as an adult, like, there's so many ways that you can have your wedding, like, you don't have to have it the traditional way, you know? So, yeah, it's just, like, funny to think back into, like, what I used to think as a kid, and something that, like, I really struggled with growing up as well was, like, feeling a lot of shame for not having a normal childhood, for my mom not being able to talk and just not being able to have a normal relationship with my mom. And yeah, so that's just kind of like a quick summary of what it was like growing up in Taiwan. I feel like although I didn't have like your normal childhood, I was very taken care of. My grandparents like really took care of me. My grandpa, he's in heaven now, but I was definitely his favorite grandkid, and everyone in my family can attest to this. But I was so spoiled by my grandpa growing up. Like, he got me everything I wanted. Uh, one time he even caught me a bird from the park and brought it home for me as a pet, but it died the next day. So yeah, notes to you guys, don't catch a bird in the park and make it into your pet unless you know how to take care of a bird. But really sweet of him to do. But also, yeah, long story short, I was really taken care of despite not having a childhood, and I recognize that. Um, so after my dad passed, my uncle, he actually really took over the role as like my father figure. And him and his wife at the time, they had their family and they were mostly living in America. So that's how I made my way to Kansas City, was because I moved here to America with his family, and they adopted me into the family, and I started my life here in America. Sounds like the dream, right? The American dream. I just moved here from Taiwan and I am here for a better future for myself. And but it really was not as easy as that, because once I moved here, it was a huge like adjustment change. But I'm really glad I came at the age that I did, because I moved here when I was 9, and yeah, I felt like it was like kids were not mean yet. I was in elementary school, or at least not at my school. Like, all the kids were super like intrigued by who I was. They're like, "Oh my God, there's this new foreigner from Taiwan. She doesn't speak English. Like, who is she?" All the kids were so nice to me and super helpful. So I really had a great time like getting adjusted to America. What did become difficult was my home situation, living with my aunt and uncle's family. That didn't end up being the easiest, because my uncle was in and out of our lives a lot. He was back and forth from Taiwan to America, and eventually started like during my middle school years, he really spent majority of his time in Taiwan, which left his wife, my aunt, to take care of me plus her two other kids. And this is where I feel like I really started to experience a lot of, I don't know what the word is, but like just like hardships at home where my relationship with my aunt really became rocky. And at home, I never felt like I could be myself. I really try to be as invisible as possible to avoid getting in trouble, to just avoid anything because I felt like she didn't like me, which she did not. Because I feel like with what happened, I feel like she viewed me as a burden that my uncle left behind. And, as an adult, I can see it from her perspective, like why she felt that way, because I can 100% like understand that. But definitely it was really hard for me as a kid because I didn't know why she hated me or why she treated me differently than she treated her kids. It was really hard for me because I internalized that and I felt like there was something wrong with me growing up. Like this deep feeling of not feeling like I was enough, that was a huge thing that I like really grew up with. It became a core belief of mine was that I am not enough because I couldn't receive the love that wanted from my caretaker, from my caregiver, which was my aunt at the time. And I feel like during high school, during middle school, those are like really big years for, while you're growing up. Like we're trying so hard to fit in at school. We're trying to figure out who we are. And there's just so much like going on as we're growing. And I feel like during that period, I really needed that support in my life from my parents, from my caretaker. And that was not something that I had. So I really had to figure all of that out on my own. And I just really internalized a lot of things during that time. And she essentially kicked me out and you've graduated high school, go live your life. So that's essentially what happened. And so I moved back home to Taiwan and tried to start a new life there. But obviously it was really hard because like my life was in Kansas City and I have my friends here and I had grown to really love America. And not to mention, I had just started a new relationship with my boyfriend now, who I am still with, Chris. And we were like 3 months in and I had to move to Taiwan. So we were like doing long distance. So bless his heart, he like came to Taiwan for the first time, like being a kid himself, have never traveled out of the country, travels all the way to Taiwan for this girl that he just started dating. And like basically like got me back from Taiwan and came back to America. And honestly, that will forever be like my favorite story of ours. And I think that because of what him and I went through, like I just like he's my person. Like him, Chris and I have been through it. We were split for 2 years and this is like a whole nother part of my story. So after high school, I moved back to Taiwan. The whole time I was there, it literally felt like me against the world. Like it was me against everyone in my family. Like I wanted nothing more than to make my way back to America. So I did everything in my power to make it back here. So, long story short, I made my way back to America with Chris. So he came to Taiwan, met my family. They gave the stamp of approval. Him and I made our way back to America together. And I essentially started my new life. And as soon as I came back to America with him, I essentially decided to cut off my whole family. I was like, you know what? You guys have caused me enough trauma. It is time for me to just go my separate way. I was like, all my trauma, everything is in the past. It's really just that easy. Like, I'm on the whole nother side of the world. Like, I don't have to deal with that anymore, right? Starting this new life with my boyfriend, living in his mom's basement. um, and, him and I dated for about 4.5 years and things were great. We were, really figuring out young adulthood together. And it was great that I had him to do that with, and I had his family who really became like my family. I was learning and adjusting to this new life. And I was really happy. I was so happy to be on my own, to feel like I'm free from the shackles of my family and what other people wanted from me. But then, without realizing, like I thought it would be so easy. Like being in a relationship with Chris during that first part of our life, like it really was like putting a band-aid over all my wounds. Like instead of like I didn't realize how much trauma and how much like stuff there that I needed to like deal with and go through because of how I was moving through life. Like Chris and I, the first time around of us dating was really not healthy at all. And not to say like we had a great relationship. We were in our honeymoon phase for like a solid year or two or more. I don't even know. But we were attached to the hip. But it really got to a point where I became really codependent on Chris. And it just, our relationship dynamic was just not good towards the end. And that's when 4.5 years later, it was right after COVID. So during lockdown, we were still together. But then as soon as things opened back up, that's when I decided to end things. I brought up the conversation and decided to end things with Chris. And this was the hardest decision I've ever had to make in my entire life. But that was the decision that changed the entire course of my life. When I first ended things with Chris, I thought, oh, it was all him. Like, he didn't love me enough. Like, he should have done this, that. Like, you know, I thought it was all him and I didn't realize. But after I ended things and I was blah. And was going through the motions, the breakup, all the feelings. That's when I realized, oh my God, it's not him, it's me. Like I realized I had no idea who I was outside of being in a relationship with Chris. I had no identity. I didn't love myself. And I realized that I was never able to receive the love that he tried to give me because I didn't give that love to myself. I didn't have the capacity to love myself. So if I didn't even love myself, I wasn't able to let other people's love in or really truly able to feel other people's love because I couldn't even feel that for myself. And everything truly begins with us. And once we begin to do the work and start the changes from ourselves, then that's when it slowly reflects out into our outer world. So when I went through that breakup with Chris and we were broken up for a good 2 years and I really, really lived on my own for the first time ever in my life. I got my own apartment and really began this life. And at first, when I broke up with him, I didn't immediately start this healing journey. I really went through this phase where I was partying every single day. I think there was a good solid month where I was probably blacking out at least once a week. So yeah, I really went through this phase. I was out there living my single life. And I feel like I needed that. Like I really wanted, that was something I felt like I wanted to experience. And you know what? I experienced it. And towards the end, I remember just one day, like, just feeling so empty. And I was like, this can't be it. Like, this cannot be all life is, And I just felt like I just felt so empty. And I felt like going out and partying was like I was already so depressed and sad and just like not happy with where I was at in life. That partying was like, it gave me like that feeling of feeling alive. And it just like gave me an excitement. But I felt like I was like chasing that. And but then it's like after you're done partying, the next day you're like back to feeling empty again. And that's what I was going through. And for a whole month, I was doing that. I had my fun with it and I take nothing back. And I'm glad I had that like basically like hitting rock bottom moment where I really like sat and asked myself, like, what the fuck am I actually doing? And I think this happened like shortly after my birthday, I want to say. Um, yeah, after I like turned 23, I think, or 24, I can't remember. I probably turned 24. I just remember it was after that birthday that I really like decided I was like, okay, like something needs to change. And I stopped partying and I just like really set on this new like self-love healing journey. And that's when I like really started to sit with myself. I started to sit with my feelings. And during this period, I actually also started a prep to compete in a bodybuilding show. And because this guy who is a coach like approached me and I was like, you know what, let's do it. I was in this season of life where I was like ready for change and to challenge myself, get out of my comfort zone. And this is really like the start of something beautiful, like really the start of my transformation. And I really started to learn the very first thing I started to learn was self worth, self esteem. What is that? What does that mean? I Googled it. This is like ChatGPT was not a thing back then. Okay. So I was out here like Googling everything, writing shit down. I started reading self development books. And the very first book that really changed me is called The Mountain Is You by Brianna West. So if you guys have not read that book and you're on a self-love healing journey, I highly recommend it. Love that book. So yeah, I that's really when I began to work. So fast forward to now, it's been over 5 years and I've been able to start a podcast sharing with you guys what I've learned on my journey and what I am still learning because I've said on this podcast many times before that our healing journey is not linear. There's going to be twists and turns and bumps in the road. There's going to be highs and lows. And there's going to be lessons that we think we've conquered, that we think we've passed, that shows up again. And that's just life. And the reason why I am so passionate about self love is because that's been the biggest lesson for me. Like, I started from a place where I really had no self love. And it really took years to build that to get to this place that I am today. And I truly feel like this podcast feels like my purpose. And I've taken a break. My last episode was in December. So it's been about 4 months, but I also feel like towards the end of last season, I was really going through it with the podcast itself, but I just felt like I needed to be podcasting still. But I feel like last year, so much happened. I like went through a lot of changes in my life. Like last year was truly such a transformative year. I went through it last year with some things and like I like lost like group of friends that I was friends with, like my core friends. And if you know me, you know that like my core friends are like my family because I am, as you guys kind of know from my story now, that I'm not close with my own family. So like my friends, like people who I consider like my core group of friends, like they are my family. Like I am a ride or die. Okay. So yeah, so that was just, been a big change and I'm lucky that I've been able to find a new core group of friends in my life right now who I feel so grateful for and I feel so supported and able to show up as myself in these new friendships, these sisterhood. And yeah, this year has been so beautiful and I'm just really excited to see how the rest of the year unfolds. And I am really, really happy to be back. I feel like the podcast has been like calling out to me and I'm just now following the call and I'm answering the call. So yeah, because like I said, the podcast is my purpose. I can feel it deep in my bones and I've, taken a break from it. And I feel like this is also like another reminder that, hey, it's okay to take a break on things, especially things that mean a lot to us. I think sometimes it's good to have space from it, especially when we're in the middle of really going through big life changes or in the middle of transforming, which I feel like that was where I was at. and I just needed to take a step back. And I feel like I'm coming back into the podcast with fresh new energy. And I'm really excited for this season. I've got really exciting things planned for us. And I feel like I sound like I'm about to end the episode, but I'm like, wait, there's still more stuff that I want to talk about. I kind of have like some stuff that I know I'm going to talk about, but I've just been free flowing. Like whatever comes to me because this is like really ideally how I want the podcast to be. Like just for me to know like what topics I want to talk about, but just kind of free flow and whatever comes up. Like a conversation, like a FaceTime with me, because I feel like if I have it too structured, it's just gonna limit me, So yeah, okay. Another thing I really want to talk about with you guys is the Hannahversary. Okay, are any of you guys Hannah Montana fans? Because I am, okay? And I wanted to talk about the Hannahversary because I feel like Hannah Montana, I feel like started right when I first moved to America. Cause I was like 10 when I moved here. And I feel like Miley, she started Hannah Montana when she was 11, I think. So yeah, I just feel like when I moved here, really like going through that hard time, like Hannah Montana was like what made me really happy. Like I always looked forward to Hannah Montana. Like I just feel like that era of Disney was everything. And I just feel like that was like my space to like forget about whatever was happening at home. Like watching Hannah Montana, like it was like my safe space and it made me really happy. And I just loved it all. So just watching the Hannahversary, I don't know if you guys have watched it, but they did a really good job of filming that. And it's just like so nostalgic if you grew up watching Hannah Montana. So I highly recommend it. It's on Hulu and Disney Plus. And yeah, it was honestly really emotional. And my boyfriend Chris thinks I'm so silly for this, but I was literally in the basement watching the Hannahversary and he's upstairs gaming. And I like, after I was done, I like go upstairs and I'm like bawling my eyes out to him. And I'm like, I just watched the Hannahversary and I'm so sad. Like, I'm just like crying because I was trying to tell him and he was just like, whoa, like, what is happening? Why are we crying over the Hannahversary? But like, genuinely, it made me really emotional because watching it really had me reflecting back to myself, like my younger version at that time, who was going through so much, who was really questioning herself and really internalizing all these things. And, that's when a lot of my beliefs started to take form and just feeling like helpless and sad and not knowing what was wrong with her, So like it really just got me to reflect at that time of my life and like me just like wishing how like if I could tell my younger self like going back and be like, girl, like you got this. Like you're gonna be a boss ass bitch and you're gonna be building your empire. You're gonna have a great partner who supports and loves you and worships the ground you walk on. You're going to have beautiful fur babies. You're going to have a home that is your safe space and your safe and your sanctuary. And you're going to be doing what you love every day, surrounded by the people you love. Like I want to go back and like be able to tell her that. So anyway, just watching that really made me feel a type of way. And I really wanted to share that because I felt like it kind of ties back into, my earlier childhood as I've shared with you guys a little bit. So yeah, that is pretty much everything. I've got a lot of exciting things in the works and I am so happy to be back. And right before filming this, as I was getting ready, I actually felt called to watch this old YouTube video that I love. And in this old YouTube video, it's this like lady who is like a preacher and she's like preaching it. And she basically talks about like putting some skin in the game. And me coming back this season is like, I was like, dude, I needed that motivation because this is me. I'm back and I'm ready to put some skin in the game. And if you don't know what that means, it means like in business terms, when you're putting your skin in the game, it means like you're willing to put your own like money into the business, which means like you're willing to risk your own money into the business because that's how much you believe in it. And that's exactly like the metaphor that I love for the podcast because I'm back, and I'm ready to put myself back out into the world, be vulnerable, and to share my voice because I truly believe that I have something powerful to share and I am here to make an impact. And I feel so, so grateful for you guys to be on this journey with me, especially those that have been here since day one. I love you guys. And with that being said, there's a lot of exciting things to come. So make sure you guys are subscribed to the podcast wherever you guys are listening. And make sure you guys share the love. And I really want to and help me grow this amazing community by sharing it either on your stories or with a friend that you think will enjoy this type of podcast and content. And yeah, this is season 4 of the Self Love Model. We're just getting started. I love you guys, and I will talk to you in the next episode. Bye. You know what? I'm just gonna keep it the way it is.